Thank you and good afternoon to all of you. First of all, warm welcome to my colleagues from Visegrad, from the Czech Republic, Poland and Hungary. It's always good to have you and to have us together discussing important issue. That's the case at GLOBSEC, where the title was Future of European Union. If I remember correctly, we haven't had yet, four of us, this type of discussion about the upcoming conference on the future of European Union. You've been there, so I will not repeat what I've said on the panel, but I'd like to thank at this moment my colleague and friend Zbigniew Rauf for what the Polish presidency has done over the last year. Difficult time, difficult circumstances, but I think the cooperation was very intensive with them, and I want to wish well the upcoming Visegrad presidency, which no doubt will be very intensive under the Hungarian leadership. On the conference of the future of European Union, you've heard us individually say how we want to approach it. I will just repeat it. In Slovakia, we have prepared our program, how to organize the conference. It will have two pillars. One, reaching out to our citizens, because that's the substance of the debate this time. It should not be us politicians telling people what they should think about the European Union, but rather we should be listening to them. So that's the one strand of our conference on the future. And we have prepared also a platform for experts, because at the end of the day, it should be the outcome of national conferences that we come up with some proposals that we hope will be incorporated in the draft of changes and adjustments that the European Union may do next year. I'm looking forward to that debate. I'm quite realistic when it comes to expectations, and I'll wrap up by saying that this debate is long overdue. We promised that back in 2016 when there was a British referendum. And since then there were several attempts, but not a specific and tangible outcome as regards the future of European Union. We in Slovakia believe in the future of European Union. The overall attitude towards EU is positive in Slovakia, as is in all countries. Let me stress that. In spite of critical voices and positions, the public support in our countries is quite firm regarding European Union. That is an asset on which we want to build, and I think Visegrad could come up with a constructive approach within the upcoming conference on the future of European Union. Dear colleagues, once again, warm welcome to Slovakia. I appreciate a lot that you took part at GLOBSEC conference this year.
I'd like to introduce now His Excellency, forgive me, Zbigniew Rauf, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Republic of Poland.
Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, dear Ivan, Jakub, and Peter. It's great to be together again and to have a splendid opportunity to exchange views on the topic that is so important to all of us, the topic that I would say 17 years ago, which is so dear to us, because it was our choice, and it was our deliberate choice of us politicians, of our predecessors, and especially of our society to join the European Union and stay within the European Union. Well, I must say that we have every reason to be proud of the achievements and the performance of the Visegrad Group within the European Union. We have managed to create a very important point of reference for the EU politics. In fact, in every respect, on every issue that we in the European Union discuss. Do we differ? Yes, we do. Certainly. We differ in many respects, but nevertheless, our main interests resulting from our geopolitical experience, from our past, from our aspirations, from our political expectations, and resulting from our society's hunger for economic success. Our interests are very, as I say, are very close, and they will stay this way. And I do believe that our, vigorous, spontaneous, but I believe fruitful exchange at the panel can only confirm that. So, thank you very much. I'm now turning to the GLOBSEC organizers. Thank you very much for inviting us here. Thank you, Ivan, for hosting us in a professional and warm way, as usual. Thank you for kind words considering the Polish presidency. In the Visegrad group, I must say, and I am saying this with satisfaction, it's not over yet. We are going to meet at the end of May in Poznań and in Rogalin, and as very often we will invite our colleagues from Western Balkans to join us to discuss the accession efforts, which don't seem to be very fruitful so far. And quite frankly, I don't have to persuade anybody here that exactly the slowness of this process is highly disappointing, and we feel disappointed. We feel disappointed here, looking at our friends and partners from Western Balkans, because we do remember what we had to go through 20 years ago, for example. So, colleagues, friends, thank you very much indeed, and I would like to conclude with it's already, Jakub, you have become a classic thinker when you said in my hometown, Lodz, that you meet us more often than your own deputies in your own ministry. So let's hope this will stay this way under the skillful Hungarian presidency. I wish it to myself and to all of us. Thank you very much.
I understood the instruction.
Thank you. And now we have His Excellency Jakub Kulhanek, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Czech Republic.
All right. Well, good afternoon to everybody, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers of the GLOBSEC conference for the opportunity to meet here in Bratislava, and the mere fact that we are doing this in a physical form gives me a hope for the future. Look, and Zbigniew, you were quite right. I said it that I actually get to meet three of you more often than some of my deputy ministers. Well, I would even dare to say that, and this is rather sad, I get to see these three gentlemen more often than my own family. Look, this is a gross exaggeration, but the point I'm trying to make here is that the frequency of our meetings really underscores the vibrancy of the V4 cooperation, and I'm quite grateful for that. Well, this year we celebrate the 30th anniversary of our V4 cooperation. 30 years ago, the Visegrad Cooperation was born. It was born around the single idea of our return to Europe. And we, as the V4, have much to celebrate and be proud of today. Indeed, we were successful. We achieved the strategic goal of bringing our countries back to Europe. The EU is now a useful vehicle to amplify our voice in the EU. The V4 is also a much-needed Central European platform for dialogue and practical cooperation in our region. Although our cooperation is not institutionalized, it is highly effective. The fact that it's informal and highly flexible makes it special in the sense that we can pick and choose on what issues we want to cooperate. And where we disagree, well, we simply respect each other. But at the same time, we have the sense of togetherness deeply embedded in our DNA. And, and this is certainly a welcome and hopeful message for the future, for our common future in the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have His Excellency Péter Szijjártó, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary.
It depends, yeah? Okay. Good afternoon to all of you. First of all, of course, I'd like to join my colleagues in thanking the invitation for GLOBSEC, and putting together a panel of We4 is always very welcome, because the more opportunities and more places we do have where we can show the strength of this cooperation is the better, especially under the current circumstances when we are definitely entering a new world order, a new age, both when it comes to global politics and global economy. And this new age is definitely going to be started by a tough competition. Who's going to be the strong, who's going to be stronger, or who's going to be strongest? Both when it comes to global economics, global economy and global politics. We understand that there's a tough competition is being launched for the redistribution of the capacities of global economy. And in this period of entering a new global age, Central Europe does have to represent common sense, as it has been the case in the recent years. Remember the most serious crises, and remember the responses we have given on behalf of the Central European countries. Those responses always turned out to be based on common sense, rationality, and turned out to be successful and effective. And this is the reason why we were, and I believe will be, the growth engine of the European economy. Our pre-pandemic growth rates were much higher than the European average. And having seen our economic responses, I think it's not an exaggeration to say that we will definitely serve as a growth engine for European economy in the future as well. I'd like to mention two areas where we definitely do have to be aware. First, on migration. Migration now constitutes an even bigger and more serious challenge than before. So far, migration has constituted a cultural and a security-related challenge. Now it's going to be, or it would be, a huge healthcare risk, healthcare-related challenge and risk as well. If there are new waves of illegal migration established, then we will definitely have to be faced with enormous healthcare-related challenges. And remember, we have negotiated about this a lot on Monday in Brussels, that the fact that NATO is leaving Afghanistan puts, unfortunately, a realistic challenge ahead, which might be another migratory wave stemming from Afghanistan and the region. So we have to be very tough and committed on that. We Central Europeans were successful enough in avoiding obligatory quotas to be applied across the European Union, and we have to be strong in the future on that as well. And the second, we Central Europeans have reached economic successes based on very rational economic policies, which are mainly based on low tax rates. This is our competitive advantage in this region. When we Hungarians compete for investments, at the end of the day, we usually compete with the other Central Europeans. That proves our competitiveness. We have to keep that. That's why we have to stick to our low tax rates, and we have to stick to the fact that tax policy is a national competence, and we should not accept any external factors putting pressure on us in order to increase tax rates in this region. Because we would like to recharge Europe, but in order to recharge Europe, first we have to recharge Visegrad, and I take the instruction of Speak that we will be very vivid and very active on that. Thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen. And now I think we have some questions from the floor.
Thank you very much. My name is Andrej Matišek. I'm a journalist from Slovakia, from Devi Pravda. One question for all the ministers, if I can. regarding the future of the EU and what could be done and how it should be done, what is your view on getting rid of unanimity vote regarding foreign affairs? Basically, are you in favor or not in favor, and why? So if I can ask every minister to answer the question. And one specific question for Mr. Minister Siarto, if I can. If I am correct, you also had a meeting with our finance minister, Mr. Matovic. Could you please tell us more about this meeting? What was the main point of discussion? Thank you.
QMV in foreign policy, this is not a binary option. This is not 1-0. This is not that once you introduce it, then you are better off with the entire common foreign and security policy. That's not that easy. Number one. Number two, you cannot expect, at least from me, I don't know how, but my colleagues, that we can now at this moment, standing here in the stand, tell you what our position will be, because the discussion has not started yet. And we need that discussion because I'd like to have a rational discussion about that option, meaning other areas where we are able and ready to give up on more national sovereignty in the foreign policy. Are those areas that we can identify and have an agreement on it? Those are still many variables, if you want, in that discussion. And number three, I said it this morning in the panel, this is a very oberflächlich, are the Germans here? How do you say, superficious debate a little bit, because it is slowly becoming a mantra again, QMV in foreign policy. But tell me, or I'd like to remind, foreign policy is not a policy where you legislate. So main instrument through which we are carrying out our policy is not legislation. That is the case in the internal market where you have QMV on legislation. Therefore, we have to have a serious debate, not a, by political motivations driven debate whether we introduce QMV or not. What I'm calling for is definitely to have a more influential foreign policy. I'm calling for foreign policy where we will not always come down to the lowest common denominator, because that's not enough. We always come out with an agreement, but nobody cares of that agreement around the world. We need to do something. And I'll wrap up my answer here by saying that the common foreign and security policy is the least developed of all European Union foreign policies in a situation where we are facing global challenges, and rightly so. We should have an ambition to have more impact in foreign policy. But this is not binary option. This is not 1-0.
Okay, I must say that I, in many respects, do agree with Ivan, especially with his conclusion that the European foreign policy is the least advanced policy of the EU. Having said that, I must stress that I do not believe that the adoption of the majority voting here will improve it. Certainly not, because in our experience, the foreign policy of the European Union overlaps to a considerable extent with its security policy. And if you take a situation of Poland or the Baltic states, we do in Poland border with two countries that are in fact at war. Okay, so to give up our right to express our concerns, to create a coalition, if it's a coalition of minor or members, so to speak, in terms of its military or economic weight, considering the most vital thing that we politicians are responsible for to our electorate, the very the very security, or better to say, given our historical experience, the very right to exist, because in our history, in Poland, we have lost independence twice. So, and if somebody expects that we will be ready to give up the, our own voice, considering the security of our own country, of our close neighbors, so I must say that such a person must be mistaken, because it has nothing to do with our sensitivities. It has nothing to do with our experience that we can trade it off for something. There is no such things that you can exchange for your very right to exist as sovereign, independent state. If you have any doubts about it, look what is going on eastern to our NATO or EU border. Certainly not. We have joined the European Union in order to make it easier for us to pursue our vital interests, including above all our security. Thank you.
Said it, but well, thank you. I'll be extremely brief. Let me say that we're not there yet, and probably won't be for many years to come, if not decades. Not least because we, as foreign ministers, want to keep our jobs, but that's just a joke. But really, I mean, like my colleagues have said, I mean, for a number of reasons, I don't really see this happening anytime soon.
You know, I think it's definitely not by accident that the current European regulations say very clearly that there must be a unanimity when it comes to decisions on foreign policy, and I don't see any reason why we should change that. On the question of my meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister, you know, I cover external economic relations in my portfolio. So we discussed mostly economy-related issues, including the border crossing infrastructure. And I thanked him for his support in order to put together the financial background of the new ferry between Nesme on the Hungarian side and Radvan na Dunajom, is that right? Radvan na Dunajom, Dunaradvány, on your side. We discussed about the new bridge on Ipel between Ipoly-Damásd on our side and Chleba on your side. And we discussed about the interconnection between the two countries to be made even more frequent. I reported to the Deputy Prime Minister that by the third quarter of this year, we gonna be ready with the interconnection between Miskolc and the border. So between Miskolc and Košice, you will have the direct highway connection finally. This has been agreed upon. And I have informed him about two very important decisions of the Hungarian government, which might have also economic impacts, out of which one is the fact that by 24th of June this month, if there's no negative change regarding the pandemic situation, we come back to the normal operation of the intra-Schengen borders, meaning that our border guards will leave the border crossing stations between Slovakia and Hungary, and we will reopen those 16 border crossing points which have now been currently closed. And the traffic can flow between the two countries basically as it had been the case before the pandemic. And it has a very important economic impact, obviously. I think that's good news, and hope that it's another significant step back towards reality, generally to normality, yeah, generally speaking, and speaking between Slovakia and Hungary as well.
Are there any more questions? Yep.
Good afternoon, Filip Harce from Czech Seznam Zprávy. I have a question for Minister Rau. What is the Polish position for tomorrow's meeting in Prague about mine Turów? And is Poland going to respect the measure of the EU Justice Court? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do believe that, first of all, our bilateral relations with the Czech Republic are so good and so friendly that this obvious controversy that is affecting important sections of our societies is not going to worsen them. This is my strong belief. What I expect is that we will sit at the negotiation table and we will, in the most professional, apolitical way, defend our own interests on both sides of the table. And there is no doubt in my mind that we will come to the conclusion that the compromise is not only possible, it's not only likely, but it's also absolutely necessary. Because at the negotiating table, we are autonomous. We are conducting the procedure. If we leave it to the court, we are not going to be in a position anymore to be responsible for neither for the procedure and the procedural choices that the court is going to make, nor for the outcome. And I must say that we are talking about our very important interests, how important segments of our society understand them on both sides. But as I said, I'm really sure that the compromise has to be found. And I must say that both sides coming to the negotiating table feels exactly the same. Nobody expects that it's going to be easy. Nobody believes that, how did you put it, oberflächliche statements superficial statements will oberflächlich, genau. So that they will do. We need a very profound discussion, but nevertheless, only we two can find a durable solution to the problem. That's all I can say about it right now. We have to be patient and optimistic at the same time, but very careful. We should not jump to any quick conclusion in advance. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellencies. I'm afraid we've run out of time now, so we'll have to end.
You have plenty of time, don't you?
Well.
Okay.
There are still two questions, no. I suppose.
I mean, if my colleagues are here, and if you ask them about me, I'm fine.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dario Thuburn from AFP. A question for Mr. Rao and Mr. Shiato. About rule of law conditionality, can I ask for your comment on the ECJ's decision to accelerate this? And given these tensions that your countries have with Brussels, you've obviously spoken very eloquently about the procedure of joining the European Union, but do you think there could be one day your countries could leave the EU? Thank you.
Please, you can be first this time.
I can answer on your behalf.
I make the warm-up. I make the warm-up. Okay. Look, I think it's a very anti-democratic approach, that if you have a different opinion compared to the mainstream, then you are asked to leave. This is very anti-democratic. We are members of the European Union. We will be members of the European Union, and it's our interest that EU should be strong again. We are ready to take part in the debate how EU can be made strong again. And we reject the approach that if you don't align with the liberal mainstream, you should not speak. We definitely don't agree with those who would like to create a kind of United States of Europe on a federalistic basis. We are more sovereignist than that. And we do believe that the EU can only be strong in case the member states are themselves strong. So we will definitely have debates about the future of the EU, especially under current circumstances when we are faced with so many challenges. But challenging the rights of any member states just because of having governments which represent different type of approach than the liberal mainstream is unacceptable, to be honest. Unfortunately, I have to say that maybe together with the Polish, we are now used to politically driven and politically biased procedures going against our countries. We got used to it. We have nothing to feel shame about. Our democracies are well functioning, and the Hungarian people will have the right to make the decision about the future of the country next year again. And I don't think that the maturity or the right of the Hungarians or respectively the Polish should be challenged just because they usually make decisions which are not in line with the taste of the liberal mainstream. Okay. Please. Well, okay. Good.
Okay. Let me try to answer your question in a philosophical way. You see, a very wise political and legal philosopher, Montesquieu, wrote a political treatise called The Spirit of Law, and his argument was that you cannot find two identical countries, you cannot find two identical constitutional systems, you cannot find two identical legal systems, which means that when you look around in the European Union, and what you will see confirms the wisdom of his thesis. And this means that we have different constitutional identities, we have different constitutional institutions, we have different constitutional practices. And this goes for each and every EU state. I can give you an example. Okay, Great Britain left, but Britain left not for one reason. If you want to look for a separation of power in the British system, you have no chance to find it. Will you claim that there is something wrong, profoundly wrong with the British legal system? Certainly not. Certainly not. If you take a look at the Netherlands, you will not find a constitutional court there. Are you going to claim that there is something profoundly wrong with a judiciary? No, no. The bottom line is that we all share and practice the following values: human rights, civil society, and the democratic rule. Okay? And if a country is in a position to secure that, it has to be accepted because it's a democratic country, and the authority of the leaders are coming from the people. And we will stay and we will stick to this position, because this is our democratic responsibility towards our voters and towards our electorate. And if we gave up on this, we would not be Democrats. Thank you.
Okay, we're done. It turns into another alternative panel, which is evidence how good our panel was and how short was the time for it. But unless there are specific questions, I don't know. Yeah. Yes. But
yeah, of course. Do you expect next week having agreed on sanctions against Belarus, against regime of illegitimate leader Mr. Lukashenko? Are those sanctions being tougher than what we have seen, sectoral sanctions, and do you agree with this approach? Thank you.
You can answer.
If there is, of course, unanimity and there is no QMV, then yes, please answer.
it is unanimity, by the way. Yes, we expect that there will be additional sanctions because it's appropriate in view of actions of the Belarus regime, especially with the hijacking of a plane, and therefore the work in the respective working party is underway. Let us wait for the outcome, but yes, I do expect that there will be sanctions. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.